I think jiu-jitsu could be for everyone. But I know a lot of times injuries or previous injuries, little things will prevent people from being on the mats. I recently sat down with Chrissy Campbell, and she was, prior Navy, CrossFit coach, super into fitness, and she's had 3 knee replacements. Mm-hmm. She can't bend her left knee more than 90 degrees currently.
That's tough to do jiu-jitsu that way.
And she still does jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
she's
tough.
Been exactly, but and kudos to her pushing through and figuring out a way to make it work. But it can be done. So, and relating that to fitness, right? And I'm sure you've seen plenty of examples of this, and maybe you could share some with us. Is like, how do people? Maybe they come into your gym with an ailment or previous injury. How do you kind of work through that with people? I mean,
I love this question. Yeah,
what's your process?
It's a great question because we get all walks, all kinds in here, and people. If you came out and if you hung out at Red Dot for a few days and you just took it all in, the stuff you're going to see out there might blow your mind. First, I think people are most shocked when they come in at like the diversity of the people that we have working out with us. Mm-hmm. Again, from high level athlete, and again, it's not a lot of them, but high level athletes to desk jockey, right? Yep. And then anything in between there, ages, it's men, it's women, it's all different types of things. And all of them are working on something very, very specific. And that's why they come to us, right? They've come to us like, hey, I need to do this. And I need some personal help with this particular thing. Can you help me? That starts with, how do you do it? Like, how do you figure out that way? You have to be working with somebody most of the time. And maybe that can be you. If you have this level of education or awareness, maybe you can figure it out on your own, but you have to be working with somebody that is an expert in the field. Like here's an example. There's a great example actually. So I just recently got a new puppy. So we have a Belgian Malinois, and she's just
beautiful animal.
Yeah, she's only 4 months old, and I've had plenty of dogs, and I've had Rottweilers, several of them, and I've had pit bulls, and I've had retrievers, Labrador Retriever mixes, and whatever. And so I've had these working breeds, and so I kind of understand the breed. And I also have done lots of research on the Belgians, and I've waited several years to even pull the trigger on this thing because. I know how much work they're going to be. Just a dog in general, a puppy in general. In fact, I didn't even want a puppy. I wanted one that was like a year old. I wound up with a puppy. So it ultimately pulled the trigger and I have this dog, but I did a lot of research. Like, what's the drive level in this dog? Where do they come from? What are the issues that could be? Is this fair to this animal given the demands that they need or have?
So you can be a good owner.
So I can be a good owner, right? So I can, it's got to be a symbiotic. I want a pet, but I also want, a dog that's semi-protective of the home. I want a mascot here that can run around the gym and greet people, but I also need him to sit still when, I ask her to sit still. So there's some obedience stuff, maybe some protection stuff in there. So I have all these things I'm working with. And so the first thing I knew right away is I don't know shit about shit when it comes to these dogs. So like I know some stuff and I've had some experiences, but it's not this dog. I'm going to hire a coach. Great coaches hire a coach. So we got a coach. We got like the Jedi master of these things that are here in the local areas, a guy that we shoot with, Ricky, shout out to Ricky and Spectrum. But they so he comes to us. I'm like, how much does this cost? I'm making the investment. I'm going to have this dog for 12, 13, whatever years. And I want these things and I have these expectations. Number one, Ricky, are my expectations realistic? You know what he told me? He's like, they probably are. He goes, the obedience stuff is something that we can work on and that's pretty common and we can do that. But hey, this dog might not be okay with other dogs. He's telling me right now that my expectation might not be realistic.
Man, I love that question. Right? How often does anyone say, hey, are my expectations realistic? That's not a day one question.
Exactly.
That's a great one to take.
And so I think people are caught off guard by that when they're telling you like, this is what I want to accomplish, or I want to look like this. And you're going, well, hold on a second. Like, how realistic is this? Why do you think you can do this? Or I want it in this amount of time. Like, wait, it took you, I was interviewing this guy. We just dropped this thing. He's just full of knowledge bombs and one-liners. His name's Brad Jensen. He owns Key Nutrition out in Utah, Draper, Utah. And, we were having this little conversation and chuckling about the audacity of people that come in after 5 years of eating like an asshole, not sleeping right, not eating right. Like, they're stressed out of their brains and they want to completely change all that, and lose, 50 pounds or whatever.
3 months.
And or less. It's like, hold on. Like that is ridiculous. Yeah. It is absolutely ridiculous to even think that is completely irrational. And you can't tell somebody that, but you have to go, wait, pump the brakes here. So yeah, back to the dog situation. I'm just like, hey, Ricky, you know, like what is it reasonable to think this, you know, on the protection side of things, plus have a pet? He's like, look, man, we don't know, and we're not going to know. Yeah. We're going to have to evaluate this thing as we go. And as we go, I will give you insight to that, to what, based on my expert, you know, opinion, or where, you know, my background and what I'm seeing. And here's what could happen along the way. Right. So there's first off, don't expect that, but here's some things you might expect. So as you're going down your journey, like if you can talk with somebody, or get, you know, again, if you're the black belt talking to the white belt, like, hey, as you're going, or the talking to the lady with the knee, like, I don't know if you can do this or not, you know, but here's some things you might expect, like, or some things you can prepare for along the way that could influence this thing positively in your direction, but there are no guarantees, you know, kind of thing. So yeah, there's just like, again, great coaches, I think, hire great coaches. For sure. They want to be with great coaches, but there's the. So
you'll get those people coming in with busted elbows, busted knees, but all the time. You can work with them in whatever way is possible.
Look, man, we have 2 people out here that are amputees. Right. Wow, cool. That work out on. We have several people that have full joint replacements, some crazy ones at that, some with multiple. We have some with partials. We have plenty of people that just have chronic, you know, overuse injuries that have turned into things. There's lots of spine and hip things that we see on a regular basis. When I say that, I mean orthopedic, treated, surgically treated types of things. And they're doing all the things that they wanted to do when they came in. Awesome. You know, we're finding a way to make that happen for them now within with what's appropriate for them. Right. Like, for sure. The dude that you know, that's, you know, below the knee amputee, he's not out there doing box jumps. Right. He might want to do those, but for him, that's just not going to happen for him. Like, could you do him one-legged and all this? There's some jackass out there who'll be like, dude, you could totally go do that. But no, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for him. You know, for the person that was in the, you know, super like devastating bicycle accident a couple of years ago, was literally paralyzed, you know, where he is now compared to where he was then, like crazy improvements. Wow. But at the same time, I had several people walking that are like, dude, I just want to lose a little weight, right? Feel a little better. And we see that stuff happening all the time. But it all starts with a conversation of like, what is it you're trying to accomplish here and why? And let's just kind of peel back the layers of the onion so that we can put something together for you.
Man, I think if I ever open my own jiu-jitsu school one day, I'm going to take that approach that you have to fitness to that gym, because it's funny to me. It seems like someone who starts jiu-jitsu has to have already done that conversation prior to walking to the gym, right? Because of the format in jiu-jitsu school, it's like, yeah, you'll get the front desk person, or in good gyms, a coach will come up and talk to you and learn about you. But hey, you got a class to coach. There's 30 to 40 people in the class, depending on where you go, sometimes 10, sometimes 70, depends on what school you're going to and how it's run. But people to walk through the jiu-jitsu door have to have that conversation that you're talking about with themselves prior. And that's kind of my goal with Good for the Soul is, hey, enlightening people like, hey, you can get through that door and it's okay. But it sounds like that's the first thing that happens here at Red Dot, coming through the door, which is really cool.
And it's not practical for a lot of places. And I recognize, and that's why we're not that other thing. Right. Like the most important thing I think you can make in helping somebody achieve their goal, whatever it is, again, whether it's Ricky and my dog Rue and me and Cece, right? Or, you know, me and you as you're my client or whatever, and you're also his jiu-jitsu athlete or whatever. We have to do what we're doing right now, which is have a connection. There has to be a connection made, and that takes personality, and that takes some personal investment, and it takes a high level of awareness. You need to be able to. The 2 most important skills I think you could learn as a business person or in a relationship or as a coach or whatever is learn how to question skillfully and listen carefully. And if you can do that, even for a few minutes, what you can glean from the time that you spend there could have massive impacts on this person's introduction into your school, right? And then introduction to their first time on the mat. Like, so by the way, like, guy hit me the other day. He's going to jiu-jitsu for the first time. I won't mention any names. He goes, dude, what do I need to be prepared for? And I'm like, hey man, first off, go with an open mind, right? leave your ego at the door, right? And, just have a high level of humbleness when you go in, and don't expect that you're going in there for a fight, because my experience at the place that he's going is very respectful. And again, for anyone that's listening, this hasn't been mentioned yet, maybe your listeners know this, but look, that's not jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is not where you're going. These are the most respectful, most humbling places I've ever been. There's definitely a disconnect, I think, from the outside looking in. But
it's luckily it's starting to go away, because everyone used to think, meathead fighters, and I had that stigma when I started. But it's the most humble, nicest people you're ever going to meet is a jiu-jitsu place.
So humble. I mean, and if you're not humble, if you go in, you're going to get humbled. So one way or another. But the point of that is like, and then I gave him a couple of tips, like, dude, don't ever step on the mat with your shoes on. Don't ever ask a black belt to spar. Like those kind of don't be a total noob. But my point of that is like they're searching for like they're asking questions, but they're not always really well developed.
Yep.
Right. So you were talking about having that conversation before they come through the door.
Yeah.
So somebody might have a high enough level of that awareness to have that conversation with themselves, but most of the time it's going to be very limited. And it's going to be up to the person that's on the inside of that door, whether it's at the gym, at the school, right? Whether it's out on the field training the dog, whatever it is, they have to know what questions to ask to start.
Yeah.
And then you can develop from there. And again, our format is not for everybody. We do group training sessions here. And obviously now we have to cater more to the quote unquote masses.
Right.
But we still, everybody that comes in, if you're a noob, we'll call you that, if you come in a noob, we're going to spend a few minutes with you at the front of the session. And guess what? The other 7 people in that session, they're not pissed about that.
Right.
Because they were that person once too.
Absolutely.
So there's a culture that's been started there. Yeah.
Can you say that one more time? Question skillfully and listen
carefully.
That's so good. And what it made me think of is Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference.
I love that book.
Great book.
Yeah.
Well, as a business owner, when I was running my construction company, my younger brother actually got me to listen to it. He was a captain in the Air Force active duty. He came out, we worked together for a while. He's doing great things now. And he got me to listen to it, I ended up listening to that book. And the funniest thing about it for me was I always thought my biggest responsibility as a coach business owner was telling, like, hey, I have to, because it was part of my job, I have to teach new people. And by teaching them, I have to talk. So and then my own curiosity throughout my life, I've just always been cool. Let me ask this, ask that. So I would always ask, but I didn't know how to listen, And so, listen carefully. That's such a great point, because you're going to learn more from listening than you ever are going to learn from talking. So keep that mouth shut and just listen and learn.
that book, I listened to it as well on a road trip. It was a great book. And it did, like, for me, it just reiterated a lot of things that, I do and some of the things that I don't do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right, man. Like if you just sit back and you do a better job at getting a person to come to the answers on their own. And I was going back to what I was saying before about feeling like I need to go back and apologize to the clients that I trained early on in my career. I think a lot of it is saying less. And when I first started, to be honest, and I think there's a lot of the information giving, if you're working in the jiu-jitsu realm with the white belt, right? Yep. You have to give them some stuff to work with, but how much, how much do you give them? I know I was really frustrated when I first started, because I need some offense here. What the fuck do I do? I'm in this guy's guard. What do I do? Well, the first problem is you got in his guard. So, so how do you get out of that? Oh, I got to work my way back out of this. So kind of that point. But here's my point. I think with the information giving, when I first started in this industry, and I think this is in a lot of places now based on the information highway that exists, whether it be social media, the Google, the interwebs, whatever else, right? We had to be information givers. Right. Because it wasn't as accessible as it is now. Now I find that as coaches, particularly here, we need to be more information interpreters. And that is, you have to question skillfully. You have to listen to the answers that you're getting back from your clients, because they are way more informed than they used to be. Now, it doesn't mean the information they have is any better.
Right.
It's not that there isn't enough information out there. The problem is there's too much of it.
Right.
But we have to be able to interpret what it is that we're hearing them say back to us, and then go, oh yeah. And so for that, you have to be an information getter. So I was going back, probably didn't make that point very well, but going back to Andy Stump's Cleared Hot podcast, in that you're going out there and trying to receive information in so that you can be better at interpreting your own journey or the things that you're doing in your own life. And I don't think people spend very much time doing that.
Right.
So as a coach, I think it's one of the most important things you can do. I mean, there's skills involved, but being passionate about figuring out a way to make a connection with somebody to help interpret what it is that they're telling you, and then maybe feed it back to them in a way that helps them learn it, not tell them, but helps them come to the light, you know?
Man, you're talking about something that's so funny and very prominent in the jiu-jitsu world, right? Because of YouTube, because of all the information out there, Instagram, man. You get the white belt, blue belt coming in class like, hey, I just saw this. We're going to do this.
The loop choke. Let's do loop choke.
All this crazy shit. And you're like, what? Hey, you don't know how to do that or even have the foundation to attempt that move right now. Or you're also trying to teach everyone else on the mat. Like, let's handle this. And when I was coaching as a blue belt and purple belt, I would just, tell those guys, because they would ask me a question, hey, we're doing this and that. I'm like, no, man, stop doing that. And, and I would come at them as a prick at times, right? And that was not questioning skillfully. Well, later on, as I started getting into the later years of coaching, where you started, hey, that same presence, that same attitude, you see people come in because they want more information. They're excited about jiu-jitsu. I don't want to be the one to kill their excitement by shitting on their idea of this cool move they saw. Well, so now I take the approach of questioning skillfully. Like, oh, hey, like, where did you see that? Okay, why do you want to apply that now? And then you work through, because then the light bulb will go off like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not ready for it. Or if I am, we can work on a different time. So, I love that. The questioning skillfully.
You articulated exactly what I was trying to say there. And you mentioned a really good point, and that is killing somebody's like drive to want to get it done and disappointing them. Trying to lead by encouragement rather than criticism or whatever. There's a time and a place where you got to check somebody, but for sure. But at the same time, but you won't learn how to do that unless you know what they're hearing. So like you said, like you can get on Instagram and see a million different moves, or YouTube, and everybody's doing it. You'd be really wise as a coach or somebody that really wants to make a career out of this, or, go to the end, or, go all the way through your life with this journey at keeping up on that stuff, even the bad stuff. Just being aware of what's out there so that you can answer, I saw that too, man. Here's my takeaway.
For sure. Man, and there's nothing worse. 'Cause I'm sure at some point in your life it's happened to you, but it's happened to me in a couple of specific instances I can think about where I was excited about something, whether it was in the martial arts world or excited about cars. And I went, you're kind of doing the searching thing as a young man for a mentor in it. Hey, like, I'm excited about this. Can you help me? And they shut you down instantly. And you're like, damn, dude, like, I was excited about this thing that you're really good at. Like, why are you, obviously I don't know anything about it. Like, why are you shitting on me? And that's not going to help me get excited about it, learn from you in any way. So that's something I try to be cognizant of nowadays.
Oh man, that is a really hot subject for me. I would not be where I am in my life as a professional, as a person, as a man, if people, if I didn't have people in my corner, or people that helped me along the way. Excuse me. So I get people to reach out to me quite frequently. I just had a young man come in who works at a local spot here and wanted to ask some questions about the business model and kind of how we operate things. He's curious and he's looking to advance his career, and he just wanted to pick my brain a little bit. I will never say no to that. Cool. Like people hit me through the DMs or whatever, in our podcast, when we talk a little bit more about firearms instruction and fitness instruction in there, we talk about that very thing that you just said, people being shut down or being told that they're wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think people need to be told that they suck or that they're wrong most of the time.
Correct.
Most of the time, they're probably just misinformed or misguided. Again, going back to that misdirected energy, and they just need to be put on the right path. And shame on you if you have the skill and the knowledge to be able to do that and you're withholding. Fuck you, man. Like, sure. I just don't, and like the jiu-jitsu place, going back to the being humble and whatever else, like that's all I ever got, or get when I go and get on the mat. It's like, hey man, like I'm at a loss here. What can I be doing better here? I know you're not the instructor, like you're not, you're not the professor today, but I just felt this. Can you help me with that? What did you do? And just be willing to give up that information. So that withholding or trying to play everything so close to the chest, like you invented this shit, or like you're gatekeeping. Nah.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad practice.
99% of the time it's not the right move. And because I actually grew up Jewish and fairly religious from like 1st to 5th grade. I went to Hebrew school and I had a very religious component to my upbringing. After that, went to public school, like, oh, there's a whole other world out there. Cool. Like, this is the path for me now. But one thing I took from that was that my dad used to preach to us was humiliating someone is one of the greatest sins. because there's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from that. You're only feeding your own ego. You're shaming someone for what purpose, right? And because I remember the few times it's truly happened to me in my life, and from close friends at the time where, they don't necessarily, we're young kids or teens, whatever, they don't know they're doing it. But I remember that feeling like, wow, like this is one of the worst ever. So as a coach, as a leader, as a mentor, always trying to stay clear of that. Because I don't think there's anything worse, especially when you're wanting to start something new, as a business owner, as a leader yourself in your gym, like, you got to be cognizant of that. And also make sure your coaches are aware of that as well.
And sometimes it's a little bit tough. I mean, I find these days people are a little bit more sensitive, they're a little bit softer around the edges, and, they may feel offended, or the term humiliation may be a little bit, maybe used a little bit out of context versus a reality check.
Correct.
Is different than humiliating somebody. So I think it all comes with the intent.
Yes.
What is it you're trying to do? And if you're doing it with again, intent, there should be some kind of outcome that you would like to see out of whatever it is that you're doing. And if, as my mother always taught me, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But, sure. But the point of that is I mean, those are wise words to be getting from a parent. And I don't think are probably a lot of today's youth are getting those.
Yep.
And that's not really fair. That's a really blanket statement. Maybe they are. I'd like to think that that's the message that I'm sending to my kids. But at the same time, like there's all this other outside noise, and the ability for people to forget because of that noise so quickly that just happened. I mean, like a week from now, who's going to remember what happened yesterday, in the mainstream media news? Nobody.
No, for sure.
Nobody. So you can say and do whatever and then move on. And so I think people lose sight of like, dude, you're impacting somebody's life. That's people are looking to you as an example, or whether you want to or not, or whether you believe that or not. So
it's a great responsibility impacting someone's life, along those Jordan Peterson lines, right? It's like, hey, like that's one of the greatest responsibilities you can have in this life,